Welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Denise, with Top Source Talent. For those of you just joining the podcast, I am Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your software or tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. So I understand that Top Source Talent specializes in helping companies across a multitude of industries solve complex hiring challenges. Your scalable sourcing, executive search, and staff augmentation services ensure businesses find the right talent quickly and efficiently so they can stay focused on growth without the stress of managing recruitment in-house. Can you share more about your business and your role within it?
Certainly. I'm the CEO. I'm Denise Chaffin, and I'm the CEO of Top Source Talent. And I started Top Source Talent in January of 2013. So we've been around now for 12 years, but I've actually been in the recruiting business over 30 years. So I started this company to help companies with staff augmentation. That's why the business was started. There are some clients who will contact us to do either retained or contingent searches. For example, we are an awarded vendor, two-time vendor with the state of Arizona for state government contracts. So most of those projects are retained searches just based on the type of arrangement that we have with them. But most of our clients really like the type of services that we offer because what we do is we come in with a staff of recruiters and sourcers, depending on what our clients need, even coordinators, HR people. And we're basically providing temporary or staff augmentation to their current talent acquisition team so that they don't have to go out and hire full-time people for their team if they know they're going to ramp up and just have like maybe a 6-month ramp and they just need temporary help so that their current team doesn't get burnt out and so that they're not overwhelmed. They'll bring in our company to help them then with sourcing and recruiting. So we're basically working behind the scenes then to, help the TA teams shine and look their best to their hiring managers and also to their business leaders. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
That's awesome. And from some of the recruiting companies that I've spoken to as well, they don't really focus on those contracts. So it's awesome to hear that you're focusing on a lot of those short-term contracts and finding that niche, right? I think that's super important in business. So
it is. And quite truthfully, it's funny. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time and I was working for one of our semiconductor clients in 2012. And I was turning away work from other companies who said, hey, I just need somebody for like maybe 6 months, right, to come in and help us source. And so, I was working already. And so I said, hey, I just need to build a team. So I built a team of recruiters and sourcers, people that I knew. There were some that I trained. But I brought in a team of people and we've had up to 37 employed at one time. Actually, that was right during COVID when the electronics market was hot and people were buying all sorts of new electronics and they were setting up home offices and, the market was on fire. And so we had a lot of business with our clients at the time. But again, there was this big scale up and then, as things kind of to level off, then they could roll us off because they didn't need our support. So, we are working with a number of different industries. We work with the electronics industries. We work with healthcare. We work with medical device, renewable energy, government, like I said, data center. Who else do we work with? There's just a number of different agencies. Oh, private equity companies, management consulting companies. They're the people who are using us right now, probably more than anybody. So it's really an interesting time because there is a lot of flexibility and we work horizontally across so many different industries.
that's awesome. And I think that niche and kind of what we were just talking about, that's an awesome place to target. And it's awesome that during COVID, one of the biggest pullbacks for a lot of businesses was one of your best growth periods, right? Having 37 people on at a time is huge, especially
Yeah.
for your business, right? So
Yeah. Because normally we have a team of anywhere between, 10 and 15 people. So it was like more than double during that period, so it's quite amazing. Yeah.
that's awesome. And so we're going to shift a little bit into some market questions. So from your perspective right now, what are some current trends you're seeing in the staffing and recruiting space right now?
Ooh, man, especially like probably on the electronic side. Well, okay. So first of all, the semiconductor business has been a big industry for us for a number of years. And right now, because they're the backbone of everything electronic, we're hearing a lot of let's hold on hiring, let's hold on executing, our hiring projections that we had, put into place last year because of the tariffs, because of all the things that are going on right now with our current government administration. People are just putting things on hold at the present time. It's kind of scary, and it's kind of it kind of has a trickle effect as well, just to other industries. Anybody who has any kind of supply chain connections, with other countries, there's just a lot of on hold pausing going on right now.
That makes a lot of sense. And I actually, my other job that I do is a day trader, and that the tariffs have really affected that. And also some of our clients in the supply chain industry as well. It's really so a new time to manage some of those dealings, right? And it's a little bit tough because no one's really had to deal with it in the past 20 years or more, right? So,
I know. It's really kind of insane. Well, and there's just a lot of fear, I think,
hmm,
because it's fear of the unknown. This is new territory for all of us, and we're all in this together. We really are.
of
So
course,
as we venture forward, I think one of the first things we have to do is kind of, once the dust settles a little bit, we can kind of see how things are going to roll out, especially with some of our, allied partners, in other countries, right? We just need to kind of see, all right, at what point then do we kind of take those next steps forward and lose the fear about what might happen and just kind of keep the ball rolling? Because I mean, at some point we do have to kind of keep the ball rolling. I mean,
100%.
we can't just pause forever.
Right. 100%. And a follow-up question to that, I think that's probably making the landscape more challenging right now. What do you think is making the landscape a little bit easier to operate in right now? Maybe AI is what I've heard from a couple in my network, anything like that?
AI is helping. AI is helping us, I think, move faster because we're
Okay.
able to, in fact, anybody who hasn't used it yet, get on board. I'm using Chat GPT probably more than I am the other, what would you call them? Not platforms. They don't call them platforms. Like Gemini or Perplexity, Claude. I've tried them, but right now I tend to lean more towards Chat GPT, probably because I think it's just a little more bit more robust,
Hmm.
and it kind of handles some of the challenges that I'm running into a little bit quicker and easier than some of the others. I can't remember. There's a name that they use for them. It's not platform though.
Uh, Large language model, maybe
Yeah, maybe.
something along those lines.
Yeah, just some of the AI tools that are out there. But anyway, I am totally entrenched with ChatGPT in order to kind of help me to move a little faster through some of my day-to-day activities. It's taking over a lot of my redundant tasks. If I have questions, if I have a client that comes to me with a particular problem, it's helping me do some research. Now I'm still partnering with Google as well on some of the research that I have to do for some of my client needs, because
Mhm.
some of what we do is we help people determine talent strategies and to create talent strategies, I should say, and then determine which ones they want to use. So, in order to be an effective strategist, you kind of need to know the landscape of what your clients are dealing with. So you need to know who their competitors are. You need to really learn soup to nuts what your clients do, what their pain points are, what their successes have been with hiring, what their challenges have been. And then that way, then you can kind of develop good strategies for them, right? With respect to hiring new people or finding replacements for people that have left, especially if there's a lot of turnover. So Chat GPT though has been very helpful in kind of setting up the stage for me to, even give points to my clients and say, hey, here are some points that I pulled from Chat GPT. Let's talk about these. And sometimes they'll tell me, oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. One example was, I had one of my clients was looking for a particular type of management consultant, and they needed these people with some very specific skills and for some very specific areas. Well, what we did is we went back to some of the companies that they hadn't considered tapping into before, people coming out of these other companies who had this experience, because they kind of had this idea in their head. Well, we want these people to come out of XYZ companies only. But then when we explored, using GPT, what some of the other very successful companies are that have those same skills, we're able to go ahead and include them as some of the target companies, for candidate attraction.
And that's awesome. And we use AI a lot in our business as well. ChatGPT has been super helpful in understanding and preparing for a lot of these podcasts, actually, just because you can ask it one question. For example, for me with staff augmentation, I had no idea what that is before I read your website, right? But I can go on chat and go down the rabbit hole and really start to understand as much as I can from an outside perspective in what that really means, right?
Sure.
The other ports that we use are Dolly and Midjourney, which are some of the graphic design AI. And that's been super helpful in increasing our efficiencies on the marketing side as well.
And what are those called? Dolly?
Yeah, so one is Dolly and one is called Midjourney, but you can type in a prompt and it'll create a picture. So an example might be, hey, can you make a marketing campaign picture for YouTube? And it will generate 8 thumbnails for YouTube in less than a minute and a half, which saves us time and also money from outsourcing for a graphic designer or something like that, right? So.
Oh, you bet. Good for you. Good for you. Dolly and Midjourney, you said?
Yeah,
Mid
those are some of the top two right now, and there's some other ones coming out. I know Chat is trying to incorporate it as well, and they're getting really good at it. But I don't think they're right quite there yet with the
not
others.
quite there. Oh, I mean the tools. I mean, I just attended a conference a few weeks ago in Las Vegas for our industry, and the tools that are coming out it's daunting. How many different tools there are that we can utilize, not just for sourcing and recruiting, but also for HR analytics. For
Hmm.
employee performance analytics, for example, or any just kind of data analytics around different aspects of our industry. It's just amazing what's out there right now.
Of course, and I actually had a podcast with Jonas last week, who is a part of Empower AI, and
Mhm.
their whole goal is to create an agent-like AI that increases messaging and meetings. But a key point he made was that in meetings, only 9% of what's talked about in a meeting, in a 30-minute meeting, is actually actionable. So his goal is to take AI and then transform that 9% over a string of data sets so that in 6 months, the 6 months of meetings, you have every key point from that 9%, which for small businesses, medium business, even large, I mean, that's huge from a communication standpoint. So I'm glad you touched on what you heard in Vegas as well, because I think that's a huge shift in the industry.
It is. I think data is going to be providing data is going to be a big attribute
Hmm.
for AI. Because it's going to provide us not only with more in-depth data, but on a much faster scale. Than
Of
we've ever
course.
experienced before. And honestly, that's the data. Any company, small or large, I mean, your success is determined by the data that you get back, on your successes and your failures and, where you need to increase any kind of area of business or decrease, right?
Right.
So that I think some of the data software that's coming out with AI supported data software is going to be huge.
It definitely is. And I think it's super interesting to talk about. I'm glad we touched on it, especially because I think it's important to realize it's not just in staffing and recruiting, it's not just in supply chain, it's across all industries right now. And I think being on top and at least getting into it, and you don't need to be a tech expert, but at least understanding kind of what's going on is going to be super helpful long term.
Oh, exactly. I did something the other day. You talk about Midjourney and Dolly, and I don't know if it was something that ChatGPT did for me that was amazing. I had this sheet of company logos from this conference I had attended. And so I wanted to do a reach out, to some of the people from those companies. But
Hmm.
all I had was this big sheet of logos. So I scanned it in and I sent it to ChatGPT and I said, I need an Excel spreadsheet and I need all these companies um, put into a column, into like a
Hmm.
spreadsheet column. And I also need to have another column that kind of determines what their category is, what type of business they are. And I also want to have any information on the CEOs or, key decision makers. Within 6 seconds, I had a full report. It was
Is that
amazing.
awesome? Is that
I'm
awesome?
going, oh my God, that would have taken me just a bazillion hours. I'd be still working on it. I wouldn't have
Right.
been able to do this podcast. No,
100%.
seriously, it was amazing.
That's awesome to hear. And shifting a little bit, so from your standpoint, as our company specializes in marketing, we would like to know how easy is it to attract and retain high quality team members in the marketing space given the current demand for skilled professionals?
In the marketing space,
Correct.
um, I think that, oh gosh, marketing is such an ambiguous term. I mean, because you're talking about people who are specific to your industry, maybe, who know your
Hmm.
industry well. Also, I mean, when people talk about marketing, they're talking about branding, right? So I
Right.
think there's some overlap between branding and marketing.
Hmm.
So I think most companies are going to lean towards marketers who can do both, who also understand their industry.
Right.
I think that's going to be super helpful. So for you, I think, learning our industry, the staffing industry, and just again, what we do is something different than what other companies, what other staffing agencies do,
100%.
right?
Hmm.
So, learning all the nuances, I think is going to help to, kind of create a better relationship, with marketers and with people who can do branding for us. But as far as how hard it is to find marketers, it's not hard right now. It's just
Hmm.
finding the right marketers.
Right. And I think that's a big point that I've heard from a couple others in my network is I can find a marketer and I can pay them a normal salary, right? But are they really going to impact my bottom line is the question. They can make
Right.
the brand look good, but if they're not using the right cycle, what you're saying, like the branding and marketing goes hand in hand, right? If they're doing one side but not the other, it's not going to kind of connect, right? It's not going to make that relationship for potential new customers to come in and really drive that impact. So, um,
Well, and I
moving
kind
on.
of wonder too, do marketers, there's a friend of mine who worked in consumer goods. She
Hmm.
was working for Kimberly Clark for many years,
Okay.
and she was called a category manager on the marketing side to determine who buys their products, right?
Hmm.
So you've got people who are specific to certain industries. I mean, are there marketers who can work across multiple industries, kind of like we do in our business?
I would say yes, but I think it's very tough. I think some of those marketers that can work across industries flawlessly, it takes them a lot of years to develop that. I think most good marketers understand what industry. So, like for us, example, tech and software is like our big understanding. We both have understanding, me and my partner, of the industry and how it kind of works and the ticket size and really how marketing out those companies work, especially with VCs, especially when you have investor capital and you have a great product, but you don't know how to put it out, especially in the software space, which is an issue that a lot of those companies in the industry are running into. For example, like the agent like AI, right? Like you have all these great AI tools, but how do we get it out to other companies so that they actually use it and see the importance and the value, right? So,
Oh, seriously. I know there's still some people who, they're busy. I don't want to say slamming AI or talking negatively about it because there's still that fear factor that it's going to take over
right.
their job. And maybe it'll take over some of what we've been doing in our jobs, but
Hmm.
maybe we need it to. Um, it's really interesting when I started in this business over 30 years ago, over 35 years ago. We didn't have any technology. We didn't use anything. I mean, we were using our telephone and that was it. And manila file folders and a
Right.
Rolodex. And, we were meeting people face to face and we were like literally setting up meetings in our offices, to meet with clients and whatnot. And we would go to their offices and we would literally get paper requisitions for positions they needed to have us fill. We thought we were hot stuff with a fax machine back then, and
Right.
fax machines were our quickest way of submitting candidates for positions we were getting. But when the internet started, it was a great tool. It's kind of like AI. It was an
Hmm.
amazing um, invention, if you would, and an amazing um, what am I looking for here? It was amazing direction for us to go into,
Hmm.
in order to kind of, again, communicate quicker, communicate more effectively. I started using email in 1994. That was the first time. And it was amazing to have it.
Hmm.
And it saved us so much time,
Right.
versus picking up the phone and leaving messages and trying to, wait for people to call you back because that's how we were communicating back then, right? Just with
Hmm.
landlines. We weren't using cell phones that much yet. I mean, they were just coming out. So
Right.
there was a lot of new technology that was kind of being stirred up and people were afraid of it then. Oh my God, it's going to take my job. Well, it didn't. Our
Right.
jobs changed and what some of our jobs were back then and what they are now are different, but what we did is we adjusted, and said, okay, well, this, now that I can work faster and more efficiently utilizing email,
Hmm.
versus just fax machines, now I can scan documents and I
Hmm.
can attach things to emails, right? All of a sudden, it was like this, it was huge to come out of a no email world into a world with email. And then we had applicant tracking systems, where we were able to save resumes in applicant tracking systems for corporate employers. And that was an amazing feat as well, because then people could, directly send their resumes into companies utilizing email and utilizing still fax machines. There was still
Right.
that going on, but they were still able to utilize these applicant tracking systems now. So it made our jobs much quicker in terms of looking at resumes that were coming in from applicants. So, a lot of that happened, but what the bad part about it was it kind of turned us from being talent advisors and consultants for our clients. Now, all of a sudden, we're doing things very transactionally, and we
Hmm.
became very transactional in the way that we were recruiting. So taking AI and moving AI onto our desk is going to take away some of that transactional piece. And it's going to
Right.
allow us then to go back to, I keep saying we're going back to the future, like the movie. I don't know if you ever remember the movie Back to, so we're
Hmm.
kind of going back to the future in a way, where we can literally go back and start working on behalf of candidates, employees, employers, hiring managers, leadership. It's going to be an amazing journey forward.
And I completely agree. And I think that's a great point you made. I think a lot of people are scared that AI is also going to take, like what you said, maybe take jobs, when I think the reality is it's just going to change the job, right? So, like a graphic designer, for example, if they use those tools I mentioned before, it's now their job might be to manage those tools,
Right.
right? They might not be actually making the art anymore. They might be editing the art after the fact or something along those lines. But I think that's super important to realize. And the second part is that I think people think that AI will take away human touch, when I think quite the opposite. I think it
Yeah,
increased human touch.
it
Like
will.
I can spend more time now with clients, with people I'm meeting with, like the podcast today, because AI is automating a lot of my other things and making it more efficient. So I don't have to spend, like you said, 4 hours on discovering every brand that was on a sheet I
Right.
had at a conference, right? I can put it AI, it takes 6 seconds, and now I can hop on a call with someone else and really be personal, right? So,
So true. I was at Transform 2025 in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, like I mentioned, and I interviewed a number of people. And one of my guests for a podcast guest was Larry McAllister. And he's somebody I've known for a long time. And he had written this book called The Power to Transform. It's a really good book. And kudos to you, Larry. I'm plugging it for you. But anyway, one of the things he mentions in the book is, if you think about a pilot, nowadays, pilots don't fly planes now. They're in the plane to make sure, like he said, make sure it lands correctly, right? And takes off
mhm,
correctly. So they're there to kind of work as a systems administrator, for the
right.
plane, because the plane is really kind of very automated, what has happened with flying. So
Hmm.
he says it's kind of the same thing. We don't, the pilots don't fly planes the way they used to, but they're still in the cockpit of the plane to make sure that the plane takes off and lands the way it's supposed to, and make sure that there's nothing that happens, midair, that type of thing. So they still, their jobs have just changed. They're still
Hmm.
there. They're still, in the seat, but they're doing something different. So he used that as an analogy, and I loved that analogy.
I think that's a perfect analogy, and I think that perfectly describes AI integrating into industries overall. So, shifting a little bit, can you tell me what you're responsible for within Top Source Talent and how your day typically unfolds from start to end?
So I'm responsible for account management, for managing my clients. I have a team of people who work for me who service my clients. Basically, the clients are coming to me, generally speaking, unless, there's a relationship between one of our clients, for example, and maybe one of my recruiters, then they are doing
Hmm.
most of that account management themselves. I would say probably the majority of what I'm doing is business development and account management.
Gotcha. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And in that role, what kind of key financial metrics matter most right now to you? Is it revenue growth, margins, expense management, or client retention, or something else?
Client retention. What was the first one you said? The
Revenue growth, maybe
Yeah,
profit
revenue
margin.
growth. revenue growth, of course, and yeah, client retention.
And just out of curiosity, why are those the two main things you're tracking right now, I guess, compared to maybe your expense management or the number of clients, I guess? Like, why are those two things super important to you right now?
Because I think that I have my expenses fairly well managed.
Okay.
Again, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have learned through my own, ups and downs with finances, what's working for us, what's not working for us
Hmm.
with respect to tools. I'm at a point right now where I'm looking at new tools. We have been using LinkedIn for many years, and it's still a great tool, and I still have access to it. But I don't know that we're going to need to utilize it quite as much as we did in the past, because there are some new tools out there now that I need to try out and explore. But I think that I have the finance management and expense management fairly locked down. I think that it's always important to continue to develop new business
Of
with
course.
current clients, because
Hmm.
even though you might be working on projects, what's that next new project that you want to work on for them or help support them with?
Right.
So there's always going to be business development and also business retention that you
Hmm.
want to have. But, developing new clients as well is important, especially now there's so many new companies out there.
Right.
Because of AI, there's a lot of startups right now. And
Hmm.
when I was at the last conference, there were a ton of venture capital companies out there um, who were looking to maybe invest in some of the startups that were there,
Hmm.
first time startups, or maybe they had been there before. But it was amazing to see how many VC companies were there kind of shopping around. So there are a lot of new startups out there right now. I love working with startup companies. We love helping them get off the ground. And so from that perspective, doing business development is always important. And then revenue growth, of course, revenue growth is always important. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for sharing on that. I would say, I think exactly what you said. There's a lot of startups right now, not even just in AI, but in the tech space overall using AI, right?
Right.
I
Right.
think LinkedIn added, it's called a unicorn. But it's like you can look at certain startups that are growing really fast. And a lot of those are involved in tech and AI, like you said. But it's super interesting to see that shift from where we're at 5 years ago, maybe, right? So,
Oh, seriously. It really is amazing. It kind of reminds me of the .com era,
mhm.
just because the .com era was same thing, just businesses popping up all over the place. So, the unfortunate part about that though is you have this peak up, leveling off, and then there's some people that kind of slide off. So, I think that it's important for companies that are startups to make sure that you're not like doing one of the same, with other companies, that you really do have
Right.
something unique that you're offering, like you said, be that unicorn company. Because if you're not, you're going to be competing against a lot of other companies, and
Mhm.
I think that some companies are positioning themselves to be bought. That's what I'm hearing. So, and
Mhm.
that's great. If a bigger company is going to come in and scoop up your technology and buy it, then hey, if that's what your plan is, that's fabulous. But at the same time, I think it's important, if you want to remain a sole company and not put yourself in a position of being purchased, that you need to have a special offering that's not out there already. And there's a lot of stuff, like you said, popping up.
Definitely. And shifting a little bit, is kind of staying on the same track. Looking ahead, what are your goals for the next 12 months?
For the next 12 months, right now, I have a podcast as well. It's called Talking TA. That's right. There's my little sign right there. So we are growing the podcast and talk and the agency as well. But the podcast, I think there's like a connection between the podcast and what Top Source Talent does. So I think, making those connections between customers that we're meeting for the podcast, and then, transitioning them over to Top Source Talent if they need our support, is big for us. But then also to monetizing the podcast. We are, taking that forward. Opening up the podcast now to sponsors. We're attending more conferences. We're doing booth engagements now, where we actually go and do podcasts from vendor booths, so that they
Hmm.
can get more vendor or more conference attendees, coming to their booth. So that's kind of fun. What else? I think those are probably the key things right now.
That's awesome. And from a marketing strategy, I think that's even better. Like you're
Yeah,
building the brand out not only from just your posts on LinkedIn, but also a podcast where you can directly see Denise, right? Like
right.
this is me talking to other people, this is us growing the business, and this is how we monetize, right? And this is how we also convert new customers over because we have that brand,
Exactly.
right? It's building that out. And I think that's huge.
It
And
is.
I have a tough question, but a fun one. Hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
If I could find, oh gosh, probably on the business development side, finding
Mhm.
that one maybe key person to help me with business development because I'm doing most of it myself. And I think partnering with somebody to help me with business development for both Top Source Talent and also for the sponsorships for the podcast, that would probably be the one thing I would, yeah.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. And if people want to connect with you or learn more about what Top Source Talent is doing, where can they go and how can they connect?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Again, Denise Chaffin, Chaffin. And my agency, of course, is Top Source Talent, LLC. Or Talking TA. If you want to see our podcast library is talkingta.com. So it reach me any of those in any of those ways. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Right now we're on Pacific Standard Time because we don't change time. So right now we're PST. During the winter, we're MST. So,
Of course.
yeah.
Awesome. I will leave the links to Denise's LinkedIn. I'll actually attach her podcast too, if you guys want to go listen to that as well. And I highly recommend you check out the Top Source Talent website. It's super informative and really gives a lot of depth into exactly what they're doing. But other than that, thank you again, Denise, for your time, your insights today, and we
Oh,
will see you
thank
in the
you,
next video.
Christian. It's so nice to meet you and it's so nice to speak with you. Let's stay in touch.